Hey guys, Matthew here, and today I'll bring you the follow-up video of my 20 Chaos Ball Lightning Miner build. There are two things that are coming back over and over in the comment section of that video. The first one being how to really push that build to the next level to like really get a lot of damage and to make it as on par with other top tier builds and like with actual investment. And the other question is basically how to level the character. So I went ahead and updated the POB. I updated it in the other video description, and I'll have the updated one in this video as well in the description of the video. Real quick though, I want to talk about basically a few things on the POB. First off, there is a silver flask here, but that is for your mapping setup. Your bossing setup would actually be a quartz flask, such as the one I have here. The reason is because it gives you permanent phasing, which is a nice quality of life, but also 10% attack and spell dodge. And since we are stacking attack and spell dodge, that basically goes a fairly long way to keeping us alive. So that's pretty good. Everything else really stayed the same. Now there's one thing though, in this POB you'll see there's two socket groups separated by this one here, which is nothing that says when you can afford level 3 Enlighten. So you can look into, you'll see that it's basically the exact same thing. The only thing that changes is that once we get access to a level 3 Enlighten, we go from Skitterbots with Infernal Legion to Skitterbots with Wrath, Precision, and Enlighten. That's the only real change in the whole thing. So how we do get that though is we'll need a level 3 Enlighten. So we don't need a level 4, which is nice. And the reason why we don't need a level 4, I have a level 4 right now, but if I had a level 3, I would actually be able to get this node here, which gives me 4% reduced mana reserved, which would make it on par with a level 3 Enlighten instead. And since we're pathing through here anyways, it only really costs us 1 point to get access to that node. So it's not a big deal. Now the problem is though, Infernal Legion gives us access to our Ascendency, right, which is 30% critical strike multiplier against burning enemies. And since we are running Elemental Focus ourselves, we cannot inflict burning, despite the fact that even if you wanted to with, say, a jewel like this with fire damage dispels, it still doesn't work. You could get around that by using controlled destruction, but then you'd lose a bunch of crit. So in my opinion, it's not worth it. So we do unfortunately have to sacrifice the 30% critical strike multiplier during our mapping phase, but when it comes to bossing, we already have our Armageddon brand, which is only fire damage, which does apply ignite and stuff like that, or burning, whatever you want to call it. And because of that, we are going to get access to our critical strike multiplier when it comes to single target DPS. So the trade-off of 30% critical strike multiplier during the mapping versus getting Wrath available on the build or Zealotry, it really is really comes down to your preference, is definitely worth it. So that's really the only real change on the tree, or sorry, on the POB. Everything else stays the same. Now, one quick thing I want to mention though is that Ball Lightning has two different setups. If you're somebody who wants to be playing Ball Lightning to map, there are basically going to be a little bit of a change in your gem setup. So remember that there are basically 3 gems that will never ever change, and that will be Ball Lightning, Slower Proj, and Elemental Focus. No matter if you're going with a mapping setup or a bossing setup, those will always be the same. A difference though is that if you're going with a mapping setup, you're going to use Charge Mines alongside Minefield, and that would be your 4th and 5th link. That being said, I wouldn't recommend using those on a 4 link, so if you only have a 4 link, just go with the other setup, I guess, or drop something like, say, Elemental Focus or Slower Proj if you feel like the clearing is a little bit too slow with Slower Proj early in the campaign and stuff like that. But when it comes to the end game, at least when it comes to the mapping in the end game, and you have access to your 5 link, Ball Lightning, Slower Proj, Charge Mines, Elemental Focus, and finally Minefield. That would be your 5 link for mapping. The 5 link for bossing would be Ball Lightning, Slower Proj, Inspiration, Trap and Mine, and Elemental Focus. That would be a lot more bossing DPS, but the clear is, as you can see, for example, here, is nowhere near as good as if I had Minefield on, because Minefield would throw 3 mines at a time, basically. And with the helmet enchant, 3 mines at a time would mean 6 balls going through at a time. And Minefield doesn't feel that bad when you pair it with Charge Mines, because you get you do get the 10% mine throwing speed per frenzy charge. You have 3 frenzy charge, so that's 30% mine throwing speed. And also, the frenzy charges do give you 4% more damage each, so it's not all that bad. But when it comes to bossing, inspiration and trap and mine damage are infinitely better. And also, they allow you to be a lot more mobile because Minefield kind of does stun lock you into an animation, which is not always ideal. Now, the next thing I want to talk about real quick is how to level the character, which is a question I've had asked multiple times. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the tree and show you guys exactly how to level it up. First off, let's start with the Ascendency. We are a Saboteur, but this is how the Ascendency works. First off, we're going to start with Born in the Shadows, followed by either Bomb Specialist or Pyromaniac. Pyromaniac is more defensive, Bomb Specialist is more damage. Third off would be whatever you're missing, and you would finish off with Explosive Expert because you really don't need the damage until you get to mapping and bossing and stuff like that. So for the tree, we're our shadow. We're going to start off with this node here into the elemental damage all the way up to trickery. Then we're going to get this elemental damage node into saboteur, which is very, very important. Having saboteur will really make it easy to kill Brutus. Without this node, Brutus feels pretty damn hard to kill. Then we're getting into elemental focus, into cold-hearted calculations, lethal assault, into Fangs the Viper, resourcefulness, back up here through the bottom side though, because this gives us all res, which is quite nice, and some life. Down here into Blood Drinker, all the way up into the mine wheels, so clever destruction into devastating devices and high explosives. Then we'll make our way up. We can go ahead and grab the top side of Blast Cascade along the way. Then we can make our way to Volatile Mines. So the side you go for Volatile Mines will depend on your setup. So if you're running with, like I said, the Charge Mine setup alongside Minefield, you're going to want the mine throwing speed. It's going to feel really, really good. That being said, if you're going with a bossing setup, you could just simply go with this side here, especially if you have a level 3 Enlighten only. Because that 5% mana reservation is going to feel pretty good if you're pretty short on mana. So then Volatile Mines, then we can go down here into Successive Detonations with the bottom side for the crit multi, not the crit chance. Now here's where you basically start deciding what you want to do, because at that point you'd be level 28. You're probably going to want to start grabbing life on the tree, so you have Blood Drinker, but that's it. You can go ahead and grab Blood Siphon for 2 points and Melding for 2 points. That brings you to 32. If you feel like you need more defenses, you could already start making your way down to Phase Acro, but it might be a little bit early for that. You'll probably want to do that later in the campaign, or even when you get to Blood Aqueducts, for example. So at level 32, you probably want to just get more damage. So since you do start getting a decent bit of crit here, because you're getting this crit, this power charge generation, you can go ahead and get Doomcast if you wanted to. That'll help with some crit. Throat Seeker will help with some crit as well. Sorry, that was a notification, follow notification on Streamlabs, my bad. Then we can make our way up to Cruel Prep. Down from Cruel Prep, we'll get Annihilation into Arcanist Dominion, Heart and Soul, Quick Recovery, and finish it off with Retribution, Discipline and Training, Light of Divinity, Holy Dominion, and Devotion. And then this brings us to level 72, which you'd pretty much be a little bit past Blood Aqueducts, finishing the campaign, whatever. So at that point, you can go ahead and get your Phase Acro. That brings you to level 80, and at level 80, you can finish off the tree with some life nodes, or, jewel sockets as well. So we're missing this jewel socket for 2 points. We're missing this jewel socket here, this jewel socket, and this jewel socket, or this one. But at this point, though, you would not have Destructive Apparatus. To go get Destructive Apparatus, you would have to respec, because if you go for Destructive Apparatus here, it brings you to 88. But if you go ahead and grab all the jewel sockets, which you would have at that point, all of a sudden you're looking at 95, and then Prodigal Perfection is also pretty decent damage, so you grab this and you're at 97. So that's pretty unreasonable for most players. So how do we save some nodes on the tree? Well, we take a different pathing. Instead of pathing through all this stuff here, we are going to respect once we get into about level 80 or so. We can go ahead and respect to this node, this node, this node, and this node. So instead, we can take off all of this here, but also all of this as well. So now, this is basically going back to the level 87 tree that I had beforehand. I guess I'm just missing a 6% life node right here, and this is the exact same tree that I had. So that would be how you level up the character, at least when it comes to the skill tree. Now, if you're ever wondering what gems to level and stuff like that, what I'm going to do is in the description of the video, I'm going to link a VOD from a good friend of mine called Crouching Tuna. He leveled this character up fairly recently. There's a VOD on his Twitch that I'll link, and he's leveling from the very beginning of a league, basically, with like no twin gear or anything like that. And he goes ahead and levels from nothing all the way up to map, so Akden Kitava in 3 hours and 10 minutes, I believe, and that is doing either 1 or 2 labs, I can't quite remember, and all the skill points. So a pretty damn good leveling speed, and you'll see basically how he levels with arc mines, and then he transitioned into BL later after he's done with the campaign. Just throw in ball lightning in your offhand or something like that. You could also just have a swap when you're clearing, and then when you get to a boss you can swap in the ball lightning. It really is up to you, but I'll be linking that in the description of this video. And the last thing I want to talk about for this video is basically how to push this build to the to the point where you can invest hundreds of exalts into it, and make it on par with some other really high-end builds, such as, let's say, cast on crit cyclone or something like assassin, or like a 13 impale slayer or something like that. All those really expensive builds, because this build has enough damage potential to pretty much beat every single one of those builds. This build can be pushed to a pretty extreme level. So again, in the description of the video will be a link to a forum guide, which basically explains how to turn a ball lightning into a low life, and then how to really min-max a low life version of this build. So low life gives you access to pain attunement, which is 30% more spell damage, so literally 1/3 more damage in a single node, and then you get shavs, and you'd probably get like a +2 lightning wand, so a wand with +1 to all spells and +1 to all lightning spells, lightning skills, sorry, which would give you basically +2 level to your ball lightning, bunch of stuff like that. So a lot of min-maxing that you can truly start investing lots and lots of currency into to push it to as much to as far as you really want it to. So I'll be linking that in the description. And so for those people, that'll be available. Hopefully this video answered all the questions that you guys might have had. And to finish it off, I want to say, as always, a huge thank you to all my supporters and patrons. So Gikona, KFish, Casticus, Minicel, Luro420, MrCoffee, James, and Explosive Nacho. Thank you guys all so much for the support. I do want to say also a huge thank you to people who wish to remain anonymous, because there are some people who do, and anybody who has supported me in the past as well, and anybody who supports me on different platforms as well. So people on Twitch and all that other good stuff. Huge thank you to you guys. You guys make this possible for me, and huge thanks for that. If you do want to check me out on Twitch, I mostly do, as always, just currency related content. So I do just make currency, so mostly crafting and advice in general, and currency generation and flipping, and you know the drill. So that's most of my content on Twitch. If you want to drop by and say hi. Otherwise, that's going to be Matthew signing out. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.